Notre Dame,
Mm-hmm.
10.5. Now, as we record this, we're a few hours removed from learning that left tackle Charles Jagusah is going to miss the season, which is a massive, massive loss for Notre Dame. They obviously open at Texas A&M. We know how good Nick Scorton is. We've talked about him transferring from Purdue a bunch on the show. But 10.5, I always thought was basically an are they going to make the playoff question.
Mm-hmm.
Because this schedule on paper doesn't look all that strong. Like, you'd think 11-1 is what you'd have to get with this schedule to make the playoff. And now that's definitely feels like the question here.
Yeah. I think they're really, really interesting, Andy, because of the dynamic. You brought up the injury on the offensive line. Just looking at it and looking at them and their personnel, they've always had those guys. They've been deep on the offensive line. I mean, go back to when Alt started as a true freshman. And they've always been be able to rely on those offensive lines. And that's one thing I think that they pride themselves on. And I always still think is the number one thing I want when I have to go play on the road is a trustworthiness in your offensive line. That crowd's not going to be a factor. You're going to be able to, make your calls and all that stuff. And Notre Dame's done a great job of recruiting that position and providing depth. And now the table's kind of turned, Coach Freeman's a defensive guy. That defense should be lights out. Whatever position you look at, I love the talent. I think Morrison's the best corner in the country. I don't see him on enough All-America teams. That kid's a stud. Watching him in person against the Ohio State receivers last year, I was blown away at how good he is. I love the addition of Jordan Clark. He's the ultimate quarterback in a secondary that faced a lot of – he was on a bad football team. And now I think about those kind of guys that go to an established program now and where he can really show how much of a difference is. He doesn't take on as much responsibilities, but he's also making sure everybody's on the same page back there in that secondary when you go on the road and you got to place really good teams. So I've always thought Notre Dame's going to be a playoff team. I almost put them, it's funny, Scott and I were talking about the Florida-Miami game, and I made a prediction. I believe Florida beats Miami and Miami goes to the playoff. I will not be shocked if Notre Dame loses week 1 but still manages to go to the playoff. I think that's a big time place. That is, all the connecting dots with Leonard and Coach Elko, and I believe Notre Dame has another Duke transfer at linebacker. The weirdness of that, and knowing how on point College Station will be for a night game in primetime with a new regime in town. You and I were there. I was really bummed that whole year basically got blown out of the Johnny Manziel documentary. But that weekend when Alabama came back to College Station, and that was when the stadium wasn't even done yet. That place was so ready to pop, and it's as good as it is. The Yale practice will be at nighttime, the nights before that, but they are rearing to go. Being around Elko, I thought it was one of the coolest things last year with College Game Day. He brought his whole staff over to the game day conference room after our meeting to meet everyone, and I just thought it was a down to earth move. Where he said, we want to come to you, you're coming to show us some shine. We want to go give you some time. And meeting all those guys and see where they ended up is awesome for them. So I think it's a tricky game for Notre Dame. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised, but I do expect Notre Dame's defense to be the difference in that game. So I believe they're a little point favorite, but I would go over with Notre Dame.
Okay.
I do think they have the goods. Riley knows he has to be better throwing the football. And, I just talked about Notre Dame. What their makeup has always been is they've always had that offensive line. And in the years past, they haven't had any wide receivers. Now they got some guys that could do some things. So I think that's going to help out Riley a lot. The running game, I'm not worried about losing Estime. They've always done a great job of recruiting that position also. But, again, that defense and Freeman being a defensive guy, I expect big things from Notre Dame this year.
So I'm going to go under because for the same, I think they dropped the one at Texas A&M, but then to go over, you got to run the table after that. I think Louisville, Georgia Tech, Florida State, all tricky. I think Florida State probably will wind up being favored over them. even though that one's in South Bend.
See, I have no idea. I'm sure we're going to talk about them, but their last game, like what that team's going to look like at the end of the season, SC, I have no idea.
That's the one. It's a complete mystery to me too, because I think they can go one of two ways, and it's either polarity. And if it goes well for SC, that's going to be a problem for Notre Dame, because that game could be huge for SC, or it could be huge for both.
Yep.
Like the idea of a Notre Dame USC game to make the playoff, is amazing. Like with one of them's getting in and one of them's not.
Yeah, because they're going to be done with their Big Ten play, so that's. I mean, you always want that game to mean so much, and I feel like we've been let down. I mean, we only had, I want to say the only time, Caleb had that great game a couple years ago to win the Heisman, put his cement. But like the Manti Te'o, that SC team wasn't good. They hung around with him.
Yeah, they never seemed to meet each other on equal terms.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.